On October 2, 1869, in the coastal town of Porbandar in present-day Gujarat, a child was born who would grow up to become one of history's most transformative figures. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born into a middle-class Vaishya family, the youngest of 4 children to Karamchand Gandhi and Putlibai. His father, known as Kabir Gandhi, served as the Diwan, chief minister, of Porbandar and later Rajat, while his mother Putlibai was a deeply religious woman whose spiritual devotion would profoundly influence her youngest son. As a child, Gandhi was described as restless as Mercury, either playing or roaming about, with a favorite pastime of twisting dogs' ears. Despite his playful nature, he was deeply affected by the Indian classics, particularly the stories of Shravana and King Harishchandra, which left an indelible impression on his mind and sparked his early identification with truth and love as supreme values. His mother's religious practices, her daily prayers, strict vows, and consecutive fasts, instilled in him a respect for spiritual discipline that would later become central to his philosophy. Gandhi was described as a shy and withdrawn child who preferred solitude and spent hours reading religious texts such as the Bhagavad Gita. At the age of 13, in 1883, he was married to 14-year-old Kasturba Mukherjee in an arranged marriage, following the customs of the time. This union would prove to be one of the most significant relationships in his life, with Kasturba becoming not just his life partner but also his companion in the struggle for justice. In 1888, at the age of 18, Gandhi made the momentous decision to travel to London to study law. This journey required him to take strict vows to his mother, not to touch women, wine, or meat in the foreign land. He enrolled at University College London to study law and was simultaneously admitted to the Inner Temple, one of the Inns of Court, to train as a barrister. During his time in London, Gandhi's political consciousness began to develop through his exposure to thinkers like John Stuart Mill and Henry David Thoreau. He also became an active member of the London Vegetarian Society, where he met like-minded individuals and began exploring the ethical dimensions of food choices. His childhood shyness persisted during his London years, but the experience broadened his intellectual horizon significantly. After returning to India in 1891, Gandhi struggled to establish a successful legal practice. He worked briefly in Rajat before moving to Bombay, now Mumbai, but found it difficult to build his career. These early professional struggles would soon lead to an opportunity that would change not only his life but the course of history. In 1893, Gandhi accepted a position with Dada Abdullah and Company to represent them in a lawsuit in South Africa. This decision, which was initially meant to be temporary, would extend to 21 years and become the crucible in which Gandhi's revolutionary philosophy was forged. The defining moment came during Gandhi's journey from Durban to Pretoria. While traveling in a first-class compartment, he was thrown off the train by railway officials simply because a white passenger objected to his presence. This humiliating experience, along with subsequent incidents of racial discrimination, transformed Gandhi from a struggling lawyer into a champion of civil rights. As he later reflected, this journey was his moment of truth. He would no longer accept injustice and would defend his dignity as an Indian and as a human being. In 1894, Gandhi founded the Natal Indian Congress to advocate for the rights of Indians in South Africa. He also established the newspaper Indian Opinion in 1903 to raise awareness about the plight of the Indian community and promote social justice. However, it was in 1906 that Gandhi's most significant contribution to the world was born, the concept of satyagraha. Satyagraha emerged as Gandhi's response to the discriminatory Asiatic Registration Act, also known as the Black Act, which required Indians to carry registration certificates with fingerprints at all times. On September 11, 1906, during a massive public gathering at the Empire Theatre in Johannesburg, the Indian community collectively declared their refusal to comply with this discriminatory law. What followed was an 8-year campaign of non-violent resistance that would establish Gandhi as a formidable leader and satyagraha as a powerful weapon against injustice. The movement saw various phases despite the government's ultimatums. Only 511 out of 13,000 Indians registered for the certificates. Gandhi was arrested in January 1908, and jails filled rapidly with satyagrahis refusing to register. When General J.C. Smuts was forced to negotiate, Gandhi agreed to voluntary registration in exchange for the repeal of the Black Act, but Smuts reneged on his promise. Gandhi's decision to register despite opposition led to him being attacked and injured by angry satyagrahis on his way to the registration office. Yet he maintained his commitment to non-violence and his trust in eventual justice. The movement culminated with the successful campaign that included demands for the repeal of the £3 tax on Indians, recognition of Indian marriages, and the loosening of immigration restrictions. In early 1914, an agreement was reached that favored most of the Indians' demands, marking a significant victory for non-violent resistance. During his time in South Africa, Gandhi also established two important settlements, the Phoenix settlement near Durban in 1904, where residents shared chores and grew their own food, and the Tolstoy farm, which became the training ground for satyagraha. These communities embodied Gandhi's vision of simple living and self-sufficiency. Gandhi returned to India on January 9, 1915, at the request of his political mentor Gopal Krishna Gokhale. The man who had left India as a struggling lawyer returned as a seasoned leader with a proven method of resistance. However, following Gokhale's advice, Gandhi spent his first year traveling across India to understand the conditions under British rule before engaging in any political activity. Gandhi's first major campaign in India began in 1917 when a farmer named Raj Kumar Shukla persistently urged him to investigate the grievances of indigo farmers in Champaran, Bihar. The European planters had been forcing peasants to grow indigo on 3/20 of their land under the exploitative Steenkathier system, but with the declining demand for natural indigo due to German synthetic dyes, the system had become even more oppressive. On April 15, 1917, Gandhi arrived at Motihari, the headquarters of Champaran district. When he was served a notice to leave under Section 144 of the Criminal Procedure Code, Gandhi refused to comply, stating he was ready to suffer the penalty of disobedience. His trial on April 18 became a watershed moment. Thousands of peasants gathered outside the court, and Gandhi's willingness to go to jail for their cause electrified the region. The success of the Champaran Satyagraha was multifaceted. It marked the beginning of mass participation in the Indian independence movement. It established Gandhi's reputation as a mass leader. It provided the first direct lesson in civil disobedience to the Indian people. It resulted in the abolition of the teen Khathia system and compensation for the farmers. Following Champaran, Gandhi launched similar campaigns in Kheda, Gujarat, and among the mill workers of Ahmedabad, further refining his methods and building a nationwide network of supporters. These early successes established the foundation for the mass movements that would follow. The period following World War I marked a dramatic escalation in Gandhi's resistance to British rule. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre in April 1919, where British troops killed hundreds of unarmed civilians, shocked Gandhi and the entire nation, leading him to conclude that the system of government needed to be ended rather than merely reformed. Gandhi's strategic genius was evident in his alliance with the Khilafat movement. Indian Muslims were agitated over the harsh terms likely to be imposed on Turkey and the fate of Muslim holy places in the Middle East. Gandhi saw this as an opportunity to unite Hindus and Muslims in a common cause against British rule, offering to lead the Muslim community on the Khilafat issue if they accepted his non-violent methods. This alliance was historically significant because Gandhi's program of non-violent non-cooperation was endorsed by the leaders of the Khilafat movement even before it was approved by the Indian National Congress in September 1920. The collaboration created a rare moment of Hindu-Muslim unity that would fuel the largest mass movement India had yet seen. The non-cooperation movement, launched in December 1920, was Gandhi's most ambitious campaign to date. The program included boycott of government legislative councils, courts, and schools, boycott of foreign goods and promotion of Swadeshi, indigenous products, surrender of government titles and honors, refusal to pay taxes. The movement was initially highly successful, paralyzing British administration across India. The program started with boycotts and gradually escalated, with Gandhi promising that if the movement succeeded, India would achieve self-rule within a year. Massive protests, strikes, and acts of civil disobedience spread across the country, with Hindus and Muslims joining forces in unprecedented numbers. However, the movement came to an abrupt halt in February 1922 following the Chauri Chaura incident in Uttar Pradesh, where an angry mob murdered 22 police officers. Gandhi, horrified by this departure from non-violence, immediately called off the entire movement, much to the bewilderment of many Congress leaders. The next month, he was arrested and sentenced to 6 years in prison, though he was released early in 1924. This decision to halt the movement at its peak demonstrated Gandhi's unwavering commitment to non-violence, even when it meant sacrificing immediate political gains. The movement marked the transition of Indian nationalism from a middle class to a mass-based movement. After a period of relative political quiet, Gandhi launched what would become his most famous campaign, the Salt March or Dandi March of 1930. The British had maintained a monopoly on salt production and distribution, forcing Indians to buy expensive, heavily taxed salt while being prohibited from producing their own. On March 12, 1930, Gandhi set out from his Sabarmati ashram near Ahmedabad with 78 trusted volunteers, beginning a 240-mile journey to the coastal town of Dandi. The march was carefully orchestrated, covering about 12 miles per day, stopping in different villages each evening where Gandhi would address growing crowds about the injustice of the salt tax. The symbolism was perfect. Salt was a necessity of life that affected every Indian, especially the poor. As Gandhi declared, next to air and water, salt is perhaps the greatest necessity of life. The march gained momentum as hundreds more joined the core group along the route, creating a moving demonstration of mass resistance. On April 6, 1930, at 8:30 a.m., Gandhi reached the seashore at Dandi and picked up a handful of salt, technically producing salt and breaking the British law. This simple act sparked large-scale acts of civil disobedience across India, with millions participating in the making and selling of salt. The movement's impact was enormous. The satyagraha against the salt tax continued for almost a year, with over 60,000 people imprisoned. The Dandi March drew worldwide attention to the Indian independence movement through extensive newspaper and newsreel coverage. The campaign eventually led to the Gandhian Pact of March 1931, which ended the satyagraha and paved the way for Gandhi's participation in the Round Table Conference in London. By 1942, with World War II raging and Britain's resources stretched thin, Gandhi launched his most radical movement, the Quit India movement. On August 8, 1942, at the Gwalior Tank Maidan in Bombay, now August Kranti Maidan, Gandhi delivered his famous Quit India speech, giving the clarion call of do or die. In his speech, Gandhi declared, "Here is a mantra, a short one, that I give you. You may imprint it on your hearts and let every breath of yours give expression to it. The mantra is, do or die. We shall either free India or die in the attempt." He emphasized that this was not a drive for power but purely a non-violent fight for India's independence. The British response was swift and severe. Within hours of Gandhi's speech, almost the entire leadership of the Indian National Congress was imprisoned without trial. Gandhi himself was arrested in the early hours of August 9 and imprisoned in the Aga Khan Palace in Pune, where he would remain until May 1944. Despite the arrest of leadership, the Quit India movement became the most serious rebellion since 1857. Various violent incidents occurred across the country, and the movement took on a more decentralized, underground character than Gandhi's previous campaigns. The British had to deploy significant military resources to suppress the movement, even as they were fighting a world war. Gandhi's personal life was marked by both deep love and considerable tension. His marriage to Kasturba was initially challenging. He was possessive and controlling in his youth, but their relationship evolved into a partnership of mutual respect and shared purpose. Kasturba actively participated in his political activities, including being arrested and imprisoned for participating in protests against the treatment of Indian immigrants in South Africa in 1913. The couple had 4 sons, Harilal, Manilal, Ramdas, and Devdas. Gandhi's relationship with his children, particularly his eldest son Harilal, was complex and often strained. Harilal frequently clashed with his father, struggled with alcoholism, and felt overshadowed by Gandhi's towering public image. Gandhi's philosophy was built on 2 fundamental pillars, satya, truth, and ahimsa, non-violence. For Gandhi, truth was God, and everything else was momentary. He believed that while finding absolute truth might not be possible for humans, everyone should search for truth according to their understanding while remaining open to correction. Ahimsa, or non-violence, was not merely the absence of physical violence but encompassed a complete way of life. In Gandhi's thought, ahimsa precluded not only the act of inflicting a physical injury, but also mental states like evil thoughts and hatred, unkind behavior such as harsh words, dishonesty, and lying. It was based on positive values of love, forgiveness, and compassion. The beauty of Satyagraha, Gandhi argued, was that it did not depend on physical or brute force but on moral force, the force of truth and justice, the force of self-purification and self-suffering, love and service, courage and discipline. He strongly believed that change should come first to the individual, then be introduced in society and its institutions. Gandhi's final years were marked by both triumph and tragedy. India achieved independence on August 15, 1947, but it came with the painful partition into India and Pakistan. The division of British India displaced between 12 and 20 million people and resulted in massive communal violence. Gandhi was fundamentally opposed to the partition of India. He believed that Hindus and Muslims were sons of the same soil of India. They were brothers who therefore must strive to keep India free and united. Even when most Congress leaders had accepted partition as inevitable, Gandhi remained the notable exception, continuing to oppose the division until the very end. The partition created an atmosphere of hostility and suspicion between India and Pakistan that continues to this day. For Gandhi, who had dedicated his life to Hindu-Muslim unity, the partition represented a personal and political failure. Despite his opposition to partition, Gandhi threw himself into relief work for refugees and efforts to stop communal violence. In January 1948, when the Indian government withheld payments to Pakistan during the Kashmir conflict, Gandhi went on a fast unto death to pressure the government to honor its financial commitments. His fast forced the government to reverse its decision, but this act was seen by some Hindu extremists as favoring Pakistan. Gandhi's life came to a tragic end on January 30, 1948, when he was assassinated by Nathuram Vinayak Godse, a 38-year-old Hindu nationalist. At 5:05 p.m., as Gandhi made his way to a prayer meeting on the raised lawn behind Birla House in New Delhi, Godse stepped out from the crowd and fired 3 bullets into Gandhi's chest at point-blank range. Godse, a member of the Hindu Mahabharata and associated with the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh (RSS), justified his act by claiming that Gandhi favored Muslims and was responsible for the bloodshed during partition. This was not his first attempt. Godse had previously tried to assassinate Gandhi in 1944, twice attempting to attack him during prayer meetings. Gandhi was carried back to his room in Birla House, where he died shortly thereafter. The man who had led India to freedom through non-violence had become a martyr to the very violence he had spent his life opposing. Godse was captured immediately, tried, and executed in November 1949, despite pleas for clemency from Gandhi's own sons. Gandhi's influence extended far beyond India's borders, inspiring civil rights movements worldwide. Martin Luther King Jr. drew directly from Gandhi's philosophy during the American civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s, applying principles of nonviolent resistance to challenge racial segregation and discrimination. King once remarked, "Like most people, I had heard of Gandhi, but I had never studied him seriously. As I read, I became deeply fascinated by his campaigns of nonviolent resistance." Nelson Mandela acknowledged Gandhi's influence on his fight against apartheid in South Africa, praising Gandhi as an inspiration for embracing peaceful protest rather than violent confrontation. The techniques Gandhi developed in South Africa returned to help liberate that very country decades later. The United Nations has recognized Gandhi's continuing relevance to global peace and justice. As UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres noted, perhaps Gandhi's most important legacy was in creating a culture of peace, improving the effectiveness of non-violent non-cooperation, and drawing the world's attention to the gap between what we do and what we are capable of doing. Gandhi's ideas continue to drive the work of the United Nations for equality, empowerment, and global citizenship. His vision encompassed not just political freedom but human rights, sustainable development, environmental protection, and social justice, issues that remain central to global discourse today. Gandhi's core teachings remain remarkably relevant in the contemporary world. Truth and integrity, his emphasis on facing truth with courage continues to inspire leaders and activists. Non-violent resistance, his methods remain the preferred approach for many social justice movements. Simple living, his advocacy for sustainable, minimal consumption resonates with environmental movements. Inclusive society, his work against untouchability and for social equality prefigures modern human rights advocacy. Moral leadership, his demonstration that ethical means are essential to achieving just ends continues to challenge political leaders worldwide. Mahatma Gandhi's life was a testament to the power of moral conviction and non-violent resistance. From a shy child in Porbandar to the leader of a nation's freedom struggle, from a struggling lawyer to the great soul who moved the world, Gandhi's journey embodied the transformation possible when one commits completely to truth and non-violence. His assassination on January 30, 1948, silenced his voice but amplified his message. The principles he lived and died for, truth, non-violence, social justice, and human dignity, continue to inspire movements for freedom and equality across the globe. Gandhi proved that the seemingly powerless could challenge mighty empires, that moral force could overcome physical force, and that love could triumph over hatred. In his own words from the Quit India speech, "We shall either free India or die in the attempt." Gandhi achieved both. He freed India and, in his martyrdom, freed the world to embrace his vision of non-violent resistance as a path to justice. His life remains a beacon for all who seek to change the world through peaceful means, proving that one person, armed only with truth and love, can indeed transform history. The story of Mahatma Gandhi is not just the biography of one extraordinary individual, it is the narrative of how moral courage, unwavering principles, and selfless service can overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. In our contemporary world, facing new challenges but eternal questions of justice and human dignity, Gandhi's life continues to offer guidance, inspiration, and hope that change is possible when we, in his immortal words, be the change we wish to see in the world.